Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle to triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you follow, like, and share. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. Let's jump right in. Considering where you are and the journey that you've been through and all of the ups and downs, what would you consider to be your biggest failure? And what did you learn from that experience?
Honestly, I would say my biggest failure was not believing in myself sooner. I've put myself down so often. I opted out of experiences. I always thought other people were better, other people could do it better. I always thought there was some it to get done, right? Like I really believe my biggest failure is not believing in myself more sooner.
Yeah. What do you think is the correct age for that?
I don't know. I have 3 kids. I have 2 girls and a boy. My daughters are 7 and 11. My son is 10. And I am a very intentional parent because as a coach and somebody who has spent many, many years introspecting into what makes me me and how I can be a better version of myself, I'm very aware of how the things I say and do and the parent I am impacts my children.
Yeah.
And so I work very hard at building that self-confidence in my children on a daily basis with the smallest things. They want to cook, I let them cook. I give them responsibility. I let them own the consequences. And I always say, like, parenting is an exercise in self-control.
Yeah.
Because they don't mind making the messes, breaking things, spilling things, learning from their experiences. We mind as parents, right?
Yes.
We are carrying all of our garbage with us and trying to hand it over to them and be like, don't break the plates. We don't have more than a dozen plates. And then we're like, well, we can afford plates. So
Yeah.
break the plate. It's fine. So I always am so aware that good parenting is just being able to just quiet myself and let them be kids.
Yeah. I just did a TikTok on this. One of the things that I do with moms, especially who are struggling with something similar to what you're talking about, is I have an exercise that I have them do where it doesn't matter how old your child is. Obviously appropriate, like at least 4 or 5 years old. But I tell them to have their child bake a cake from scratch, and they're not allowed to touch anything or say anything negative. They have to literally get the ingredients, age appropriate, right? But ingredients, or if they can read, then they do nothing. But they have to sit there and watch. So she has to sit and she has to watch them bake a cake, but with no negativity and with no touching. So anything that happens that's not within the realm of what we deem as appropriate, it has to be rewarded with a good job. They spilled a little bit, they cracked an egg, they broke an egg, the flour half got on the counter, half. Good job. Good job. How do we fix that? How do we adapt? And then all the way through till cooking it, all the way through till putting the frosting on it and it being uneven, and then pressing the spatula too hard in and leaving like a big gaping hole in it, and just allowing them to not only make the mistake, but to observe you watching them make a mistake and how you are approaching, their missteps. And it's very rewarding. The feedback is great.
I'll bet, for both the parent and the child, right? The child feels empowered and the parent is recognizing what triggers them.
Yeah, definitely. When did you get into, personal growth? When did that kind of come into your world?
Um, so I've been journaling since I was 14, 15 for many reasons. First, I needed an outlet, then I needed to express anger. But personal growth really kicked in when I was 22. I I thought I had done all of the right things. I went to college, I got my master's degree from MIT. I was in America. I had moved by then. I moved from Lebanon to the US when I was 17. So I took 21 credits, got great grades, got into MIT, did my master's, got a job. And there I was, sitting there with my job, making money, thinking, here I was, I've done it, like
Yeah,
what it was.
yeah.
And I was profoundly unhappy.
Wow.
And at the same time, I did a pap smear, and I got like had an abnormal like precancerous cells. And then I was playing soccer and I injured my knee. And then I found myself sitting in winter in Cape Cod with this diagnosis and with an injured knee and with myself for company. And I realized how profoundly unhappy I was with who I was, with what I was doing, with where I was, with what life was about for me. And that was the trigger. That was the really huge starting point where I bought the book that completely made me never turn back, which is Christiane Northrup's Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom. It, it's a book like this thick, and it is phenomenal. She's she's a medical doctor, but she's very connected spiritually and emotionally and scientifically, which are for me, I need all three. And the things I discovered there about being a woman and about introspection and how your health is impacted by your psychological state, all of that just pushed me into a complete different direction. I quit my job. I had a green card in the US. I left it. I moved to Guatemala for 2 months. I was working as an engineer in the US. I moved there. I enrolled for Spanish classes. I was teaching at an orphanage. I started learning salsa. Like, I just took a 2 month sabbatical to ask myself the really hard questions of who do I want to be? You know?
Yeah,
I had never taken the time to do that. And I guess
yeah,
it's young, but at the time I was like, I thought I have it all. Why am I so unhappy?
yeah, yeah. I think that that's so interesting, the perspective now looking back, because you're kind of on both ends of the spectrum. On one end, you endured, in my eyes, some pretty traumatic events that you're viewing as not really that traumatic. And then again, educationally, is that a word? And career wise, um, I would say that's all phenomenal, really good. And again, you're viewing it differently. And I think that that perspective is so important for us to hear you say, number one. And how do you, so you read a book, but how do you get to start, right? Obviously you've done way more than that at that point, but at this point, but how do you go from reading something to starting to actually live differently? Like, what's the difference between absorbing and realizing and then living authentically? What are the steps that you're taking?
Yeah, like it's not an intellectual practice. How do you integrate? I think one of the biggest gifts I got from my childhood is recognizing that life is fleeting, right? Like two gifts actually. One is that life was so not fun and not happy that the moment I had autonomy and freedom to live my way, I really wanted to live the best life I could because I felt like finally my life is mine. I don't have to endure war or dysfunctional family or whatever it was. And the second gift is that because we were so isolated and not really part of society, and like I said, the gifts of my grandmother and my mother is that they always walked to the beat of their own drum.
Yeah.
I never felt social pressure to conform. I always felt like I can do whatever I want. It's my life. So that those two things were really helpful. It's the recognition that I own my destiny,
Okay.
and the deep gratitude, and the awareness that I have one life, and that it's very short, it's very fleeting, and the chances of actually being here and living are so minuscule. And I'm here. Like, it's I already won the lottery ticket by being alive.
Yeah.
So I felt like everything else is just maximizing that chance of life.
Yeah. I totally get that
You know?
100%. Yeah.